not something that people talk about openly, but it plays a critical role in how human relationships evolve. When a woman first becomes attracted to a man, her brain is responding to certain signals: confidence, decisiveness, emotional stability, independence. These qualities trigger positive chemical responses in the brain. Neurochemicals like dopamine and oxytocin reinforce feelings of excitement, trust, and connection. But the human brain is also constantly evaluating change. When the behaviors that originally signaled strength begin to shift, the brain adjusts its perception. A man who once appeared confident may start asking for constant reassurance. A man who once had a clear direction in life may slowly begin centering his entire identity around the relationship. These actions often come from love or fear of losing someone important. But psychologically, they send a different signal. Instead of projecting independence, they suggest dependency. Dependency changes the emotional dynamic in subtle but powerful ways. The person who once seemed strong and self-directed now appears uncertain, searching for validation rather than standing firmly in his own identity. And when that perception changes, the respect that once supported attraction can begin to weaken. This is why the warning signs often appear long before a breakup actually happens. Sometimes the first signal is sarcasm. The woman who once admired you begins making jokes that carry a small hint of disrespect. At first it seems harmless, something you can laugh off, but over time the tone becomes sharper. Other times it appears as constant criticism. Small habits that never bothered her before suddenly become sources of frustration. Your decisions are questioned more frequently, your opinions are challenged more aggressively. Another common signal is comparison. She may casually mention another man who seems more ambitious, more confident, more successful. The comparison might be subtle, almost indirect, but the message beneath it is clear. The perception she once had of you is beginning to shift. And sometimes the most powerful signal is silence. Conversations that once felt alive and engaging begin to feel mechanical. Emotional warmth fades, replaced by distance and detachment. You may still spend time together, but the connection feels weaker, as if something essential has quietly disappeared. Let me tell you about a situation many men experience. Imagine a man named Mark. When Mark first entered his relationship, he was driven and independent. He had a routine, personal goals, and a sense of direction that made him confident in who he was. His partner admired that energy. It made her feel secure and attracted to him. But over time, Mark slowly began abandoning the things that defined him. He stopped pursuing his hobbies. He spent less time working on his ambitions. He started reorganizing his entire life around keeping the relationship comfortable and stable. His intentions were good. He believed that prioritizing the relationship would make it stronger. At first, it seemed to work, but eventually something began to change. Without realizing it, Mark had slowly replaced his independent identity with the relationship itself. The qualities that once made him interesting and confident began to fade. Instead of seeing the same ambitious man she admired in the beginning, his partner began seeing someone whose emotional stability depended heavily on her approval. The attraction that once existed began weakening. Not because she suddenly decided to stop caring, but because the psychological signals that originally created attraction were no longer present. This is why so many breakups feel sudden to men. From his perspective, everything seemed normal until the day she says something like, "I need space," or "I don't feel the same anymore." But from her perspective, the emotional shift had already been happening gradually for weeks or months. By the time the words are spoken, the internal decision may already feel inevitable. This leads to a truth that many people find uncomfortable. Love alone is not always enough to sustain attraction. Love can create deep emotional bonds. It can produce loyalty, compassion, and long-term partnership. But romantic attraction often depends on something slightly different: respect. Respect for a person's character, their independence, their ability to stand firmly in their own direction. When respect fades, attraction often struggles to survive. This doesn't mean relationships are hopeless or that people are incapable of growth. It simply means that human psychology responds strongly to certain signals of strength, stability, and self-respect. The good news is that this dynamic can teach us something valuable. The solution is not about controlling another person or trying to manipulate their feelings. Real strength comes from focusing on the parts of life that build genuine confidence. A man who maintains purpose, ambition, and emotional discipline naturally creates a stronger presence in the world around him. Purpose is especially important. When a man has a mission in life, something meaningful that drives him forward, his identity remains grounded. The relationship becomes part of his life rather than the center of it. This balance often creates a healthier dynamic for both people. Emotional discipline also plays a crucial role. A grounded man does not collapse under pressure or constantly search for reassurance. He communicates clearly, expresses his thoughts with confidence, and respects himself enough to maintain boundaries when necessary. Over time, these qualities create something powerful: respect. And respect, when it grows naturally from a person's character and behavior, becomes one of the strongest foundations for lasting attraction. In the end, the goal is not to win a battle of control or dominance. The goal is to become the kind of person who stands firmly in their own identity. Someone who knows their direction, values their time, and carries themselves with calm confidence. When a man reaches that point, something interesting happens. He stops chasing validation from others. And when he stops chasing validation, the people around him begin to see him differently. Because respect cannot be forced, negotiated, or begged for. It is built slowly through the choices a person makes, the discipline they develop, and the strength of the life they are building. And once a man truly understands that principle, he begins living differently. Not out of fear of losing someone, but out of confidence in who he is becoming. Before this video ends, my friend, there is one final truth I want you to remember. Many men walk away from a relationship believing they lost something irreplaceable. They replay every conversation in their minds, wondering where things went wrong, wondering what they could have said differently, what they could have done better. They blame themselves, they blame timing, they blame circumstances. But often the real lesson is something deeper. Relationships do not just test love, they test identity. When a man slowly forgets who he is, when his purpose fades, and his life begins revolving around the approval of another person, something inside him quietly weakens. Not because he lacks kindness or loyalty, but because he has abandoned the very foundation that once made him strong. And strength, brother, is something the world responds to. No, and strength, brother, is something the world responds to. Not the loud kind of strength that tries to dominate every room, but the quiet strength of discipline. The kind of strength that comes from a man who wakes up every day with direction. A man who has goals he is building, values he refuses to compromise, and a sense of purpose that exists whether anyone else is watching or not. This is the kind of strength that creates natural respect. When a man lives this way, he stops chasing validation. He stops measuring his worth through someone else's attention. He begins to understand that relationships should add to his life, not replace the life he is meant to build. And something interesting begins to happen when a man reaches this point. His presence changes. His posture changes. The way he speaks, the way he moves, even the silence around him begins to carry a different kind of energy. People sense it, even if they cannot explain it. They see someone who knows where he is going, someone who stands firmly in his own direction. That kind of presence is rare, and rarity always commands respect. But this journey is not easy. Growth rarely is. It requires honesty, the kind of honesty that forces a man to confront uncomfortable truths about himself. It requires discipline when motivation fades. It requires patience when the results of change take time to appear. Yet the reward is something powerful. A man who rebuilds himself after loss often becomes stronger than the man he was before the relationship ever began. He becomes more self-aware, more emotionally disciplined, more focused on building a life that cannot be shaken by temporary setbacks. And once a man reaches that level of self-mastery, something shifts inside him. He no longer fears losing someone because he understands that his value does not disappear with the end of a relationship. His value comes from the person he is becoming, the habits he builds, the discipline he develops, and the life he continues creating every day. So if you have ever felt that quiet moment when respect faded, if you have experienced the confusion of watching someone slowly drift away, Do not let that moment define you. Let it refine you. Let it sharpen your understanding of yourself. Use it as fuel to rebuild your discipline, your purpose, and your direction. Because the world does not remember the man who gave up after disappointment. The world remembers the man who stood back up, rebuilt himself, and continued moving now forward with even greater strength. And when you reach that point, something remarkable happens. You stop chasing respect. You stop chasing validation. You stop chasing approval. Instead, you focus on becoming the strongest version of yourself. And when that happens, respect no longer feels like something you must ask for. It becomes something your presence naturally commands. So take this message with you, reflect on it, and most importantly, apply it in your life. Because the journey towards strength, discipline, and self-mastery is not just about relationships. It is about becoming the kind of man who can stand confidently in any chapter of his life, whether he is alone, rebuilding, or walking beside someone who truly respects him.